The mould, he gave the name of penicillium. And the mould waste, which is even more toxic than the mould, he gave the name penicillic acid. And the penicillic acid is the penicillin that we know today. And granted, penicillin has saved the lives of probably millions. Has, is, and will continue. But we've got a problem today, and it's the overuse of the penicillin, overuse of the antibiotic. I'm not against antibiotics. In a crisis, they may save a life. But the problem today is that for a sore finger, for a sore knee, people are being given antibiotics. A friend of mine, I was talking to her last night, her husband has a gut problem and he was given an antibiotic, and they tested him and they felt that there was still some sort of bacteria in his gut, so they gave him a stronger course, and he's no better at all. And now they say, well, if you go to the specialist, and the specialist said, well, we'll put you into hospital and we'll do IV antibiotics, but it'll cost you $10,000. Do you know what's happening in his gut? One health writer said, you take an antibiotic, it's like dropping an atomic bomb in your gut. What did the atomic bomb do? It killed the good and bad alike. What we've got to look at it is, why is it there? We've got to bring back the balance into the gut rather than coming in with this kill mentality. And have you noticed, many people that take an antibiotic, then they get thrush. Why do they get thrush? Because what's antibiotic? An antibiotic is a mould. It's a mould waste. To date, I have always said, and in my research I discovered, 5 million different yeasts, molds and funguses have been documented. My husband said to me, he's my biggest critique. If I can pass Michael, I'll pass anyone. I'm glad he's my critique. He said, I don't believe that. I said, oh, well, check it out. He said 25 million. Oh, it's this big. And each mould can have 2 or 3 different mould wastes. And probably one of the most famous moulds is Aspergillus. And in his book, The China Study, Dr. Colin Campbell, he was asked to go to the Philippines because children were dying of liver cancer between the age of 8 and 10 years of age. Liver cancer, something that often only gets adults, and even that, alcoholics. And what he found was the common denominator was peanut butter, and every jar of peanut butter had the mould waste in it, which comes from Aspergillus, which is aflatoxin. And aflatoxin directly affects, you guessed it, the liver. He presumed that the wealthy children would be okay, but the poorer children would be dying. But he found the opposite would be true. The poorer country children were actually surviving. It was the city children that were dying, because he just presumed the city children, their diet would be better. Well, the country children, they're eating vegetables, they're eating maybe some local fish, maybe a little bit of soy, but the city children, they were eating what Time magazine coined as the meat-sweet diet. High meat, high dairy, high sugar, high refined. They were the ones that were dying. And Colin Campbell scratched his head because in med school he was taught you need meat for protein and you need milk for calcium. Unfortunately, that's about all that they are taught. And so this surprised him. As the years went by, he started to do his own research. And he did it on a lot of rats. You see, rats have the same gastrointestinal tract as humans, but they only live 2 years, whereas humans live, 70, 80 years. So what you can see what would happen to a human in 80 years in a rat in 2 years. So what he did was he injected 20 rats with aflatoxin. 10 of the rats he gave 20% animal protein, 10 of the rats 5% animal protein. At the end of 2 years, every rat on the 20% animal protein was dying or already dead from liver cancer. But the 5% animal protein, there was no cancer. And he said that he could switch it around after 1 year. So after 1 year, he switched it. Stopped the 20% animal protein and gave them 5% animal protein, and then the other way round. After 1 year, the 5% animal protein didn't have cancer, but as soon as they went to 20% animal protein, the cancer rose up. And when they stopped the 20% and went to 5%, the cancer stopped growing. Isn't that incredible? It actually shows exactly what Antoine Beauchamp was saying. Disease is born innocent of us. So what we're eating and what we're drinking is having an effect on our cells, having an effect on disease in our body. I also have a book at home called Mycotoxins, and it was put out by the Agricultural Department in Australia, and it's looking at mycotoxins. You see, mould waste, the medical term for mould waste, is a mycotoxin. Myco means mould, fungus. Toxin, of course, is a poison. And it shows there that every year it goes into billions of dollars, the loss in agriculture and also livestock from mould. And they were showing that they had this grain that was mouldy, not even pigs would eat it. They covered it with molasses, the pigs still would not even eat it. And yet pigs are seen as will eat anything. But what I found very interesting was that in the early 1900s there was an epidemic of cardiac beriberi all through Asia, a heart problem. And they traced it to the mould growing on cooked rice. Rice moulds incredibly much easier than any other grain. So in 1921 they passed the Rice Act, putting stringent rules on the storing of cooked rice. So rice could not be kept more than 24 hours. After 24 hours it had to be discarded. So if you make sushi, it has to be cooked in the morning and sushi's made at lunch, or fried rice cooked in the morning, made at lunch, or at night, but not for the next day. Cardiac beriberi wiped out. So just as aflatoxin directly affects the liver, this mould waste from the cooked rice directly affected the heart. And I had a few pathologists to our program, and one guy said when he was in university they found the two things that always tested positive for mould was peanuts and cooked rice. And then we had a lady also did our program who worked in a fast food place. She said when the inspectors come round, they go straight to the rice and test it. So it is acknowledged that rice moulds very, very easy. Now I remember one young man I was consulting with a few years ago. He was 30, he had a few health problems. I couldn't fault what he was doing, he didn't drink, didn't smoke, he exercised. So I went back to his food. He ate a lot of rice. He said, yeah, I cook a pot of rice on Sunday and it does me all week. Aha. You see, that mould, you only see it when it's to its reproductive stage. So it's already developing before you can even see it with the naked eye. There are 4 ways that mould can get into the body. One is through the skin. So if there's a mouldy orange in your bowl at home, don't touch it with your hand. Don't breathe it in. You can breathe it in. Get tongs and take it outside, put it in the compost bin. So it can come in through your skin, you can breathe it, and you can eat it. It can come in ingestion, and it can be sexually transferred. If you go to a medical textbook and look up myco, you will look up page after page after page of different diseases that have a myco prefix, meaning they're coming from fungus or mould. And as I studied all this, we touched on it in my nutrition course, and I started to explore it more and more. That's why I wrote my book, Self-Heal by Design. So now the $1 million question is, But how do you get it out of the body? How you get it out of the body, number one, is to starve it. So what's its favourite food? Loves sugar. And if you don't give it sugar, it'll happily eat lots of the sugar from fruit. And loves yeast too. And so we suggest no yeast in the diet, not brewer's yeast, not nutritional yeast, none of the yeasts. No yeast bread, the sourdough bread, because it's a combination of wild yeast and lactobacillus. It's the same combination that you see in your gut. Traditionally, all bread was the sourdough method because it basically pre-digests the grain. So you starve the fungus. And in my research, I also saw how some researchers are going one step further and showing the link between fungus and cancer. And there's a book in the library there, it's called Cancer is a Fungus by Dr. Tullio Simoncini. He's an Italian oncologist. So has he got a Nobel Prize, especially considering he was getting about a 90% success rate? Because you know what he would do? He would inject sodium bicarbonate straight into the cancer, and the cancer couldn't survive. Because with cancer, it thrives in an acid environment. It also is a high glucose consumer. And cancer also hates oxygen. So it likes an anaerobic environment, no oxygen. So when he was injecting sodium bicarbonate in, it's the ultimate alkalizer, gives a wave of alkalinity so the cancer can't survive. So did he get a Nobel Prize for this? No, he was thrown into jail. All his qualifications have been taken away. Apparently, he injected someone with sodium bicarbonate. I don't know the details, but apparently the man died. And you know what I think? Was the man about to die? You know what my husband said? If only he'd injected him with chemotherapy, he wouldn't be in jail, would he? No. And he's had all his qualifications taken away from him. He's on a charge of manslaughter. Because you can't patent sodium bicarbonate, can you? Can you drink sodium bicarbonate? All you'll do is neutralise your stomach acid. And that could be helpful if someone had stomach cancer. But if they had stomach cancer, they could drink the sodium bicarbonate as soon as they wake up in the morning. But when it comes to the mealtime, you want an acid environment because that's how your protein gets broken down. If cancer consumes high glucose, that's why getting the glucose levels right down. So if someone comes to us wanting help to conquer cancer, we suggest eliminating all fruit, all sugars. So what do they eat? Lots of vegetables, lots of legumes, some nuts and seeds. And there's so many vegetables and so many legumes and so many nuts and seeds, you can have quite a nice variety. But if someone has a fungal problem in their body, maybe it's something like thrush or jock itch, anal itch, vaginal thrush, eczemas, things like this, they don't necessarily need to totally stop fruit, just get it right down. And we've seen quite a few people recover from cancer. And so what we do is we get them to go on the low glucose diet for about 6 weeks. So in my book I define that. Plus, very important to make sure that the person's house or, they're not getting reinfected with mould. One lady who had breast cancer, she explained her house. Her house had big gum trees all at the back of the house, and this was the sunny side of the house, and her bedroom was there. And she had an ensuite there that didn't have a window, and between the ensuite and her bedroom was her wardrobe. And there were gum trees also here, so And there was a veranda, you know, in Australia we have verandas, so that got probably about 10 minutes sun a day, if that. And she said her wardrobe is always mouldy. Her shoes are always mouldy, the belts, the leather belts are always mouldy. It's always damp. And she had breast cancer. And when she heard about the link between mould and cancer, she just put her head down. She's only 35. She had no idea. You see, along here, the children's bedrooms, and they had a bathroom here, and there's, you know, maybe rooms like that, but they were getting bits of sun, and their bathroom had a window, and it had big windows along here where the sunny air came through, but it was just that little corner in her house. That's why I say get the trees away from the house, get skylights in, get fans in, let the air and the sunshine get into the house. You see, if mould is in the house, you have to ask why. It's only there if it's not, if it's conducive for its growth. Was very sad about this lady because she only lived another 3 months. She had 3 little children. It was very sad. But when she was at our program, she rang up her husband. She said, I can't go home. I can't go back to that house. See, she was the cleaner in the house, and her husband, he just was there really at night, and when he was there in the day, he was rarely in the bedroom. And she was the cleaner of the house, so whenever the mould was there, she'd clean it. And if you clean mould, as soon as you start wiping it, you start breathing in the... And if you put bleach on it, you create one of the most toxic mixes. So what can you do? You can spray it with white vinegar, spray the whole thing with white vinegar and leave the room. Come back 10 minutes later and then wipe it up because the vinegar will kill it. But you've got to find out why it's there, because there should be no mould in a house. So you've got to starve it, make sure. Remember, these are opportunist organisms, and if there's a lot of waste going in, those microorganisms have something to eat. Also, kill. I do think we've got to get away from the kill mentality, but there are herbs that will kill fungus and won't kill you. Isn't that good news? Things like grapefruit seed extract, oregano essential oil, garlic. In my book I list a whole lot of things. Number 3 is balance. Bring back the balance. Early this morning, one of your first drinks was Lactobacillus acidophilus, bifidobacterium powder, coming down into the gut to restore the balance in the gut. Our body runs according to precision balance. Alkalize. Every juice that you will get over the next 2 days is alkalizing. And you'll notice that a lot of the drinks are a green colour or a red colour or an orange colour, so they're all the beta carotenes. We'll look at that a bit more tomorrow. All alkalizing drinks. The only part of your body that should be acid is your stomach. Everything else should be alkaline, but body's waste is acid. And tomorrow morning I will be going into detail in what's happening with your liver tomorrow morning as you go through this detox. So that's a very simple little technique that you can use to get the yeast out of your body and bring back the balance.